Okay, so we're just approaching our desired altitude. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be talking about trimming the airplane. If you're not familiar with what trimming the airplane is?
No, call it tower upgrade 907.
All that has to do with is turning our trim wheel down here to get the plane level without us putting any kind of pressure on the actual yoke. Okay? So your trim, this is going to be elevated trim. If anybody talks about trim, we will assume that there's elevated trim is what they're talking about. Why? Again, because that's what keeps the plane level without you having to put any pressure on the actual yoke. There is such a thing as rudder trim. So some planes do have rudder trim, especially multi-engines, things of that nature. But most typically, it's just going to be elevated trim. So, again, let's talk about elevated trim, and I'm going to talk about a way that I like to trim the airplane. Right now is actually a good example of what I don't like to do. So I'm at 2,500 feet, 2,500, and I have the airplane trimmed with basically dead center. So as you can see, I don't have my hands on the yoke, and I'm keeping altitude. Getting a little bang from the wind, but I'm keeping altitude. I can fly completely hands off, and I'm not descending, I'm not ascending. Right? It's just perfect straight altitude. Now some might say, and again, this is, everyone might be different, but I'm just going to lend some information and advice into how I like to do this and explain why I do it this way. So typically, I don't trim this way. This just happened to be that I'm at 2,500, I turn the wheel, maybe like a quarter turn, and it just happened to, be dead center, and now I'm flying with hands off and the wind's calm, and so there's no problem. Do I typically fly like this though? With the trim just dead center at my altitude? No, I do not. What do I do? I'm going to trim up a little bit. I'm going to trim up a little bit to a nose high attitude, to the point where now if I have my hands off, I'm climbing. I'm going now, I'm at 550, now I'm at 600, okay? Now my airspeed's going down, 600 feet, so I just gained 100 feet of altitude, having my hands off and trimming it a little bit nose up. But I'm going to tell you here why I prefer to trim nose up than to just have an even pitch attitude when I trim the airplane. The reason for that is I want to keep myself active in the process of flying the airplane. I don't want to be a passive agent while I'm flying the airplane. Why is that the case? Well, the wind's not always as calm as it is right now. The situation isn't always as calm as it is right now. What do I mean by that? There could be air traffic somewhere. If I'm sitting here and I have the airplane perfectly trimmed out, I'm not engaged in the process of flying the airplane. Yes, I'm still doing my scanning, maybe I'm still living outside or whatever, but I'm not participating in controlling the aircraft as much as I'd like to, right? Because you can see here, when you have the airplane trimmed perfectly, then your input on the controls is basically neutral. So you're not pushing or you're not pulling. When I have it trimmed up slightly, just a little bit, what that enables me to do, it enables me to be conscious of the fact that I have to at least have the pressure of my hand on the yoke to keep altitude. I don't have to have much pressure. It's about maybe, I'd say 2 to 4 pounds of pressure. But I just have to have on the yoke just to maintain altitude. That keeps me in a place where my brain is constantly engaged with controlling the aircraft, even on a calm day, even when I can trim it perfectly and just cruise. But again, I don't want to do, you might say, well, that's the most comfortable thing, and well, we can just lay back almost like we're on autopilot. That's true, you could do that, but again, I'm going to be engaged in the process, at least just a little bit. There's no more exerted effort in having my hand there at 2 to 4 pounds of pressure making sure that the yoke doesn't just come up on me, okay? This is the reason why I also trim up a little bit instead of down. Why don't I trim down? Because if I trim down, let's say if I trim down, then what do I have to do? I have to pull the yoke up. And it's very uncomfortable. Remember, kind of a little physics thing, right? It's easier to push than to pull, right? So if I have to pull, if I have a nose-low attitude, trim nose low, and I have to sit here and pull to maintain 2,500, it gets a little uncomfortable because I'm sitting like this now on the yoke, just like I am now. I'm pulling back on the yoke now 2 to 4 pounds, and it's uncomfortable, and it's going to get fatiguing. But again, if I trim up the nose high just a little bit, then I know the weight of my hand and my arm, the weight of my hand and my forearm is basically enough just to keep that airplane at the proper altitude and while still keeping me engaged as a participating agent in the process of flying the airplane and not just feeling like, oh, it's trimmed and I got nothing to worry about and I'm over here sightseeing and getting distracted. It keeps you engaged. It keeps your body engaged. It keeps you physiologically engaged to flying the aircraft to where you're not getting complacent and just thinking that it's just doing it all by yourself. So those are little tips about how to trim the airplane. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have safe flying.